motherfucking sunshines.
Bring me up for 9 of those bad boys, Bill.
9 of them?
Yeah, I got a new 10. I gotta go test that.
What'd you get?
HMG, Dirigo 2, Zpacks, Duplex. Decisions, Roscoe. Let's go set these bitches up. Earl Schaefer, Grandma Gatewood, Pappy. Do you think these motherfuckers sat in front of a computer crunching base weight numbers? Alright, so I used the Duplex up until Duncannon, PA on the Appalachian Trail in 2018. I used the HMG Dirigo 2 all 2,650 miles of the PCT in 2019. I don't give a shit about numbers, okay? I've spent enough time in both of these tents on 2 long distance scenic trails to kind of know what the fuck I'm talking about with these tents, okay? I don't give a shit about your ounces. I don't give a shit about your base weight. I'm going to try to explain to you the pros and the cons of these 2 tents in a practical fucking sense. All right, the Duplex. Now, I use this tent from Springer Mountain, Georgia, all the way up until Duncannon, PA on the AT, all right? There's 2 main reasons why I switched to the Dirigo. One, obviously, Hyperlite Mountain Gear had reached out to me. They were working on this prototype as well as another prototype. They asked me if I wanted to try one out. I said, sure. And so I used that from Duncannon, PA, all the way to Katahdin. The other reason why I switched was this thing started to break down on me, okay? I started to get pinhole marks up in the top on the roof. I don't know what it came from. I didn't put it in the stuff sack every single time. I'd have stuffed it in my pack a lot of the mornings. That could have had something to do with it. I really don't, to be honest with you. But regardless, it did start to break down on me, okay? Now I'm going to go over some of the things that I did miss about this Duplex when I switched to the Hyperlite tent. One of them being these big ass rainbow doors, okay? I am a big fan of these big ass rainbow doors. If you guys follow me on my vlogs, you know I love sitting in my tent in the morning and drinking my coffee. It's one of my favorite parts of through hiking. I love camping just as much as I like hiking. Now I pick and choose my campsites so that when I wake up in the morning, I have a killer fucking view outside my tent. When I have this big wide opening with both doors open and I can sit here in my tent and watch that view drinking my coffee, that is something special to me, and I enjoy those moments. That's why I don't rush to get out of my fucking tent in the morning to go hike, okay? I love sitting in here in the morning, drinking my coffee, enjoying mother goddamn nature. All right, another thing I missed about this Duplex was the space in the vestibules, okay? Yes, the vestibule doors do not go all the way to the ground, whereas the Hyperlite tent goes way the fuck down there, okay? There's pros and cons to that. But even though you might have an issue of splash up from rain, okay, which did happen in this Duplex, all right? If it's a heavy fucking downpour and rain's pouring down and hitting the ground, yes, it has a chance to splash up in your tent, and that happened to me a couple times, okay? And it is what it is. Now, that being said, these vestibule doors give me ample room to do all my cooking in here, drinking my coffee. When it's piss pouring rain outside or cold as fuck outside and snow on the ground, I can comfortably sit in my tent and cook a hot fucking drink or hot dinner inside my vestibule door. With the Hyperlite tent, I wasn't able to do that. All right, going back to the splashing up. Now that happened many times on the AT. Hard downpours. It was pissing rain every single day on the Appalachian Trail, it seems like. And if I was in a low spot or something like that and rain was splashing down here, it would come up underneath this vestibule door and get inside my tent when I was sleeping, okay? The way to prevent that is you just lower your trekking poles and pitch it a little bit lower to the ground. That brings your vestibule door lower to the ground. Now you can do this in high wind situations. If this tent is fucking blowing like crazy at night, just lower your trekking poles a little bit. You'll lose headroom inside, but at least it's bringing your vestibule doors a little lower to the ground, and it's going to prevent that splash up from getting inside your tent. All right, another thing I love about this duplex is the way they've got the doors designed, how they overhang, okay? One door overhangs the other. Now, what that allows you to do is, when it's pissing outside, and it will be on the Appalachian Trail or any fucking trail you do for that matter, it allowed me to keep one door open and cook inside my vestibule because they are so big, as long as the rain was coming straight down, okay? Obviously, if the rain's coming towards you, leaving one door, you're gonna get fucking pissed on, okay? But if the rain's just a light drizzle and it's coming straight down, I was able to leave one door open, have enough room in this vestibule to cook my meal and not get pissed on. All right, the last thing I really missed about this duplex is the room. This here is the roomiest two-person tent I've ever been in personally. I've owned the MSR Hubba. I've owned the Big Agnes Copper Spur 2, and I've obviously owned these two. Now, this thing is fucking huge inside. It feels like a 2-bedroom apartment, okay? I am a lazy son of a bitch. I'm messy as hell on trail. When I get to camp, I'm tired as shit. I just throw all my gear everywhere in my tent. This tent allows me to do that, okay? I don't have to think about organizing all my stuff sacks and all this bullshit inside my tent. I want to get to camp, throw all my shit everywhere, cook my dinner, and go to sleep and rest for the next day's hike, okay? This tent allows me to move right, left, forward, and back and not have my head hit the top of this tent. That is fucking baller. Now, for reference, okay, I'm 5'11" tall. I've got my head about 3 inches from the front of the tent where my head would be laying down. This is how much room I've got until I hit the edge of the bathtub floor, okay? That's ample room. If you're worried about it, if you're a little bit taller, yeah, you might have to sleep in the fetal position, or you can angle yourself sideways and give yourself a little bit more room in the corners. It is what it is. They don't make these tents for people well over 6 foot. It's just something you have to fucking deal with. Now, I woke up in about 3 inches of water one morning on the Appalachian Trail. The only thing I can think of is how it happened, and I've read about and seen videos of this happening to other people, okay, is if I roll around all the time at night, okay, I just do. I constantly toss and turn when I'm sleeping at night. Now, the only thing I can think of what happened is if you roll down, maybe I was on uneven ground, and you start hitting the edge of this tent, okay, this here mesh that is connected to the tent. Now the whole idea of this, if it's raining, this bathtub floor comes up over the overhang and rain should fall down and not get inside your tent. Now what I think happened is I rolled around at night and my feet were right up against this. I was probably on uneven terrain and it pushed this mesh outside of that outside flap, and that's how rain got in. That's the only thing I can think of. All right, now there are 2 ways you can prevent that from happening according to Zpacks. Now I never really tested this out too much, but this little toggle they put in here, all you do is tighten this guy and it lifts up the bathtub floor so that even if I was to hit this with my foot, it's not going to go anywhere. I didn't take advantage of that. I probably should. At the time, I really didn't know how it happened, but that's probably what happened. So this, you can just move this toggle up and move that bathtub floor up a little bit. Another thing you can do is just readjust your trekking poles. Move your trekking poles up or down depending on terrain, and it'll lower or raise your tent appropriate to how you are. You know, if you're on an angle, you can put one trekking pole lower than the other. All right, now the downside to having this overlap door and no zipper, okay? Now this might not, Roscoe, shut the fuck up, man. This might not sound like a big fucking deal, but when you're through hiking one of these long trails, you are sore as shit, and simple tasks like tying your fucking shoes, getting dressed in the morning becomes a fucking nightmare, and you feel retarded because you can't do basic tasks, okay? It's just the lay of the land. You're sore as shit. Now, one thing that I fucking hate doing, and it doesn't seem like a big deal to some, but it is to me, just bending over to close this door is a fucking nightmare, okay? When you're sore as shit, what you have to do is you have to reach out here, okay? Grab this fucking toggle, loosen this guy up, And then grab your D-ring on your other door. All bent over. That's what she said. Hook this motherfucker up. See, I'm not even sore and I can't even do this shit. And then you have to reach the fuck out and tighten that bitch, okay? I fucking hate doing that. Every single night and every single morning. It does suck. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're sore, that is a pain in the ass. On top of that, let's say you manage to fucking close this flap, okay, and get that toggle tight with not wanting to lose your goddamn mind. Now, if you don't want this wind flapping this goddamn tent, let's say you didn't set your tent up right and now this wind's hitting this goddamn thing, okay? Now you have to reach outside from the inside of the tent and grab this toggle, right? And then toggle this guy on. Now, doing this normally is hard, okay? Dyneema stretches a little bit, but not much. Now, that was somewhat harmless, okay? When it's cold on the Appalachian Trail, or the PCT for that matter, and your hands are numb, trying to do that becomes damn near impossible. All right, the Dirigo 2. I use this thing the entire length of the PCT. It was a fucking baller tent, still is a baller tent. It weighs a little bit more than Duplex. If you're into those fucking gram counting assholes, I think this one weighs 27 ounces, 28 ounces. I think the olive drab Duplex weighs about 19 ounces or 21. I can't remember. I'm not a fucking numbers guy. They're both goddamn light tents, okay? Now this thing's a little bit more durable. They use a thicker grade Dyneema, more heavy duty zippers. That adds into the weight too. Their hardware on these things is a little bit beefier than the Duplex as far as the toggles and line locks and shit like that, but they're both light, they're both fucking baller tents. Now this thing has its pros and cons like any other fucking tent. Let's go over that shit right now. All right, the pros. The main pro that makes this thing better than the Duplex, in my opinion, Roscoe, you're fucking up productions, man, is the durability, okay? This thing is bomb-proof, all right? The pyramid design of the Dirigo is made for high winds, okay? That's why you have it pitched so fucking drastically. If you're setting this thing up in high alpine areas, balds like Hot Spring or a Max Patch and things like this, you're not gonna have to worry about this thing blowing over in the middle of the night, okay? As long as you're using beefy stakes, and I use MSR mini ground hugs, by the way, don't go the ultralight route. Yes, it'll work if you're in environments like this, but if you're trying to set this bitch up on a bald, go some beefier stakes, okay? If you get this thing pitched taut, you don't have to worry about it going anywhere, okay? There was plenty of times on the PCT last year, and you know I love these wide, epic, open camping spots. I set this thing up in areas that other tents probably couldn't withstand, and it did just fucking fine. I didn't have to worry about that shit. All right, everything from the zippers on this thing, the carbon fiber rod that goes over the top inside the tent, the little couplings where you put your trekking poles, the mesh on the bug insert, and the Dyneema itself. Everything on this tent is top fucking notch quality. It is the most baller shit you can get, in my opinion, and this thing will hold up, okay? The stitching on it's fucking immaculate. The line locks they use on this thing are beefy. You should not have this tent break down on you. It's pretty fucking baller, and the price tag reflects that, okay? This is an $800 tent, and you're paying for all those little things that I just mentioned. You're just getting top quality stuff. And HMG does it right for sure. All right, another cool thing that HMG incorporates in this tent is this little sewn in piece of material right here with a metal grommet on it. This allows you to put your trekking pole tip right in that grommet. If you don't use baskets on your poles, you can also slip your pole down through this sewn in little loop, and it'll secure that thing. And when you have this thing pitched taut, it does not fucking go anywhere. It just makes it, the stability on it's pretty fucking insane. All right, another cool thing about this tent is, now going back to the Duplex, how I said the vestibule doors come up higher and the chance of splash up is far greater in the Duplex than it is with this one. I don't know if this thing pitched completely taut, but when it's completely taut, you've only got about 4 or 5 inches, I'd say, from the ground to the vestibule door. So if you got a heavy downpour and the water's hitting the ground, it's not going to splash up in this thing, okay? If you're the type of person that keeps gear inside your vestibule, you shouldn't have to worry about it getting wet at night when it's a downpour, because the splash up is not going to happen as drastically as it will on the Duplex. And probably the least important pro out of all this is how this fucking tent looks. This tent looks baller as shit. I don't care. If you're somebody who takes a lot of photos of your tent when you're on the trail, this thing is pretty awesome to take photos of. It just looks cool as fuck. All right, let's talk about some cons about this tent, okay? Now, a lot of these things I'm gonna mention are gonna sound real nitpicky, and a lot of it is personal preference, okay? Might not seem like a big deal, but when you use this thing day in, day out for 180 fucking days, little things like what I'm gonna mention become a real big annoyance factor, okay? Enough to where it's kind of ruining your fucking morning a little bit, or night when you set up camp. So let's go over some of those cons. Now, one thing that I missed about the Duplex when I got this thing was the big rainbow door, okay, that the Duplex has. This thing still has 2 doors, 2 vestibules, but it's a D door, okay, like a half door. You get one on either end. Now, it's still enough if you're sitting on this side of the tent to reach out and do whatever the fuck you gotta do. But let's say you're sore as shit, right? It's cold as fuck, and you're trying to get something that's in your vestibule. Let's say you're on uneven ground, right? It's lower down here, higher up here. So obviously you sleep with your head this way, right? Well, if I got all my gear on this side, now you have to think about this shit when you're setting up your tent, okay, every single night. Let's say I got all my gear in this vestibule, right? Or my coffee, snack I want, and my Nutella sitting right there in the middle of the night. I gotta sit up and then reach through this door on the other side to get whatever's in that fucking vestibule door. If I had thought about it and I had it on this side, then yeah, if my head's up here, I can just open this door and grab my shit. But it's one of those things that you don't really think about when you're setting up tent, when you're sore as fuck. So a lot of those times I had my gear set up in this vestibule and I'd have to sit up, reach outside, grab whatever was out there, and do it. It just became a pain in the ass. Whereas if I had a big rainbow door, it doesn't really fucking matter what vestibule I put my shit in. I can reach out either side, and I got, you know, room to reach out on both sides. That was a pretty big annoyance factor for me, quite honestly. Right, another thing that sucks about this Dirigo for me is the headroom, all right? Now, actually, the floor space, I think if you look at the numbers, the dimensions of this floor and the Dirigo is actually bigger than the Duplex. But because the roof on this thing is so aggressively pitched for high winds that you lose headroom on both sides, okay? Whereas I showed you in the Duplex, I could move left to right, front, back, and I'm not hitting my head. Now I'm sitting directly in the center of this tent. Let's move over a little bit. Just like 2-3 inches. Now my head is hitting the top of this fucking tent, okay? Same thing with the other side. Now I'm in the dead center, right? Move back. Now my back is hitting my trekking pole. I just moved a couple inches, okay? Same thing with before. It just seems more cramped in this thing. If you're laying down, you're completely fine. But when you start moving around in this thing, it just feels like claustrophobic to me compared to the Duplex. All right, as I mentioned with the Duplex, it was a pain in the ass closing the door, right? With the little flap and that little toggle and getting the other toggle up here closed, it was a pain in the dick, and it is a pain in the dick. Now this thing has a zipper door, okay? You think, what, problem solved? Not really, okay? What I found, now maybe I was just stupid and didn't set up my tent properly. I really don't know. But I like my tent pitched taut, especially if I'm getting in high winds area. That's why you have it taut to begin with, so your tent's not blowing around in a fucking hurricane, okay? Now I got this thing pitched pretty taut now. Now, I'm inside my tent, I'm sore as shit, it's starting to rain, okay? I gotta close these doors real quick. You still have to lean out, okay? Now, if you don't have this thing pitched somewhat straight, this zipper becomes so taut that you can't even close it the last 4 or 5 inches of the zipper. And I found myself many times on the PCT having to reach out and loosen this line lock, okay, to give it some slack to close the zipper the last part of the way. It was a pain in the ass. Not as much of a pain in the ass on as it is on the Duplex, but on this one, unless you have this thing pitched somewhat straight, that last 4 or 5 inches of that zipper becomes impossible to close unless you loosen up the slack on that thing. Now let's say you do have to loosen the slack on the thing. Now you have to reach out, loosen the slack, then you have to pull your tent, your zipper tight, and then you have to reach back out and retighten that line lock. It's also a pain in the ass. Not as much as the Duplex, but something to consider. All right, another con of this tent, the space in the vestibule doors. It's fucking useless. It's like compared to the hip belt pockets on the old Hyperlight pack, pretty much fucking useless. You want to put a Lara bar in there? Okay, cool. If you want to put anything else, forget about it. If you want to stick a pack in this thing, even if you're laying it flat, is the only way you could do it really without hitting this fucking vestibule door. The pack's gonna be sitting outside the vestibule door because these things are so small, so your gear is gonna get wet, okay? I found myself a couple times when my pack was completely soaked and I didn't want to bring it in my tent, I would have to lean it up against this trekking pole right dead center just to put my pack in there, okay? And when I did that, yeah, it kept it outside my tent, but my pack was dripping wet, and it's so close to this trekking pole now and the mesh inside my tent, it was leaking inside anyway. So these vestibule doors are pretty much useless. Forget about cooking in them. I think I cooked coffee in this thing one time up in Washington because it was so fucking cold, and I was scared shitless the whole time because I thought this thing was going to ignite. I put my flame on a really low temperature, just enough to get my water hot to have my coffee because I was that pissed off. I didn't want to go outside when it was cold to have my coffee. But yeah, these vestibule doors, or the space in the vestibules rather, are pretty much useless in my opinion. All right, another con about this tent, this is a con for any Dyneema tent, is the condensation. I don't give a fuck what you say, what you do. Condensation is going to happen in this fucking tent if you're using it for an extended period of time, okay? Now, what happened with this tent, okay? Now, with the Duplex, you have the mesh that goes around outside. Now, if you got that thing pitched properly, the whole idea behind that thing is the mesh is inside, so the condensation should run off down that mesh and outside your tent. This thing, there's no mesh. It's just sewn completely around, right? So what happened to me on the PCT is when I had condensation in this thing, what happened was the condensation rolled down. It would end up in the corners of the tent, okay? All four corners, well, especially in the lower areas, condensation was gathered in the morning if I had both doors closed in this thing. Now, so what I had to do was I just had to make sure all my gear was away from the corners. That's how I did it. Sometimes I had my extra, my buff or my other pack towel I carry. Sometimes when I set up my tent at night, I would go ahead and put those towels in the corners of my tents to soak up that condensation as it dripped down. It's just the lay of the land of using a Dyneema single wall tent. It's gonna fucking happen. Not much you can do about it, but at least with the Duplex, if you've got it pitched properly, that condensation should roll off outside your tent, including rain. Whereas this one, you're kind of stuck with it ending up in the corners. If you want to wake up in the middle of the night and start wiping off condensation, do so. If you can sleep with both doors open, do so. But it's just one of those issues you're going to have to deal with a single wall tent. Okay, let's talk about one more con. Now, this is probably the biggest for me. Depending on what kind of conditions you're camping and backpacking in, sometimes, especially in the summer months, it's hot, sticky, and it's raining, right? As I mentioned with the Duplex, you had that overhang. So if it was hot and sticky and raining, you could at least keep one door open and still get somewhat airflow in this thing. You can't do that with this tent because there's no fucking overhang, right? So if it's hot, sticky, and raining, you gotta close both doors or else you're gonna get pissed on. But when you do that, this thing becomes a hot box, okay? If you're in here smoking weed with Snoop Dogg, when it's raining outside, you're fucked because you're gonna get a major contact high and you're screwed. There's nowhere to go. There's no airflow in this thing, okay? At least with the Duplex, and if it's raining, you can open up one door and you got somewhat airflow in here, okay? You just can't do that. The only way to combat that with this tent, if it's a light drizzle, and what I did on the PCT, is I would close this zipper like halfway, okay? At least there was some airflow and it gave me somewhat of an overhang to keep some of the, the rain out of my vestibule door and getting it from inside my bug netting. But it became a hot box out here many times, and I was fucking miserable when it was raining because you want to stay dry, but you don't want to be sweating your ass off. What do? There's not much you can do. All right, so what tent do you choose? I really don't give a fuck, to be honest with you. I don't recommend gear because what works for me may not work for your ass. The only way to figure out which gear works for you is to throw this shit on your back and go hike up fucking mountains. I don't give a shit. You can watch YouTube videos to the end of fucking time, okay? It really doesn't make a fucking difference until you actually use this gear. I love both of these tents. There's some nitpicky things I don't like about the Duplex. There's some nitpicky things I don't like about the Dirigo, okay? They're both awesome tents. They're both light as shit. They both set up fast. They set up very similar. They're both cool tents. They both suck in some ways. It is what it is. Go get this shit, put it on your back, and go test it out. If you don't like it, try the next one. That's all I can fucking tell you. All right, fuckers, I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe I helped your decision. Maybe I didn't. I really don't give a shit. I was just trying to give you my honest opinion on both of these tents. Right now, it is a beautiful fall October day. I'm gonna get in one of these fucking tents and take a nap with my Basset Hound Roscoe P. Waggle Tails. This is your boy IB Tat. We'll holler at you fuckers next time.